FPL managers, welcome back. It's Zenith here and I'm going to be bringing you your Game Week 10 roundup. Before we do jump into my team and the changes I've made, I just want to apologise for no video last week. I was very ill, which is obviously carried over from the Game Week 8 video. I should have been in the hospital, but fortunately I've now recovered and we are back on the mend. So the videos are going to be coming thick and fast again each week for you to make sure you stay up to date. Let's go ahead and jump straight into my team. We're going to quickly skim over my goalkeeper as it is Sanchez. After conceding 4 against City last season, we all know he is my set and forget. They've got Liverpool. It's going to be another difficult fixture, but goalkeepers aren't really there to get you ever more than 6 points. If you get more than 6 points from a goalkeeper, it's a bonus. I don't think it's going to happen this week, especially with the form that Salah's in. So for Game Week 10, I've made 3 transfers, which has cost me a total of 8 points, which is the biggest hit I've taken this season, but I did feel that it was a necessity. We're going to come on to the players that have been transferred in and out shortly, but let's just take my team from the top. First up is new transferee in, returning to my side after his injury, and that is Trent Alexander-Arnold. Unfortunately, he rose from 7.5 million to 7.6 as I fell asleep before making my transfers last night, which, well, that's cost me 0.1 million already. Going out was Marcel of Wolves. Bruno Lage has told us that Willy Bolly is returning, however Marcel isn't ready for this fixture, and that also wouldn't have made a difference even if he was, because I've not been impressed by Wolves' performance of late. They aren't as reliable as what they have been in the past couple of seasons. When we look at Trent's fixtures, there's opportunity for both clean sheets and attacking returns, especially assists, and that is why this man is back in my team, as I think he is a must-have. As you can see, he has the gold trim on him, which means that he is in this week's spotlight and is a player that you should think about or consider for not just this game week, but the upcoming game weeks as well. Next up, we've got the man who's returned after 1 week out due to injury, thankfully, and that is Antonio Rudiger. Rudiger also decided that as well as the clean sheet, he wanted to get involved in the attacking returns against Norwich, picking himself up an assist to walk away with 9 points last game week. His next 3 fixtures are Newcastle, Burnley and Leicester, so I see more clean sheets on the horizon, and I think he is the mainstay of the backline of this Chelsea defence that has only conceded 3 goals in the Premier League so far this season. He's another man that has been highlighted for the spotlight this week, and that is why he is glowing gold for me, baby. So while we have Chelsea who have only conceded 3 goals so far this season, let's have a look at the team who have only conceded 4 goals this season. And this man has been a mainstay at the back, starting every single minute of every Premier League fixture for Manchester City, and that is Joao Cancelo. However, please be warned that Pep Guardiola did come out and say the following about Zinchenko. He said, so far, Kyle Walker and Joao Cancelo have been outstanding, but at the same time, the season is too long and they will need him, Zinchenko, and that he is happy that he is back after his injury. He goes on to say that he has a huge personality and handles the pressure easily, and he's a player with a lot of quality, and when playing at left back, he's always incredibly concentrated, doesn't make mistakes, and is so reliable. So that means that Joao Cancelo's potentially has his place up for grabs. But given that Joao Cancelo can play left and right back, I think that it's more than likely that Walker and Zinchenko are going to be the guys that get rotated in the Premier League as opposed to Cancelo. And I'm going to be sticking with this man as I hope he continues to return me some points. It's also worth noting that whilst he doesn't have a goal yet this season, he is the highest and most threatening defender out of all of the Fantasy Premier League defenders. And it's only going to be a matter of time until he does get a goal. We're only playing 3 at the back this week, which means jumping straight into that midfield selection. First player we're going to cover off is another transferee in, and that is Phil Foden. He comes in to replace the non-starting Billy Gilmour. I thought Gilmour would be a bit of a bright spark at Norwich, but after they've only scored 2 and he's lost his starting position, it's not looking too good for him. He's even dropped from 4.5 million down to 4.4, and that's just not something I can deal with on my bench. So, time to upgrade, and who else than Phil Foden? The man's on a red hot streak, having returned in game week 6 against Chelsea. He's gone on to score 3 and assist 2 in his last 3 game weeks, amassing a total of 31 whopping points. Fantastic form. Granted, he did miss in the penalty shootout against West Ham in the midweek Carabao Cup, but that's not hopefully going to bother him. The fact he didn't start the game is what we need to focus on. He didn't start the midweek cup game, which means he is likely to start this week, and we all know that he is a favourite of Pep's. City have been free scoring so far this season, with only Liverpool amassing more goals than them, and they come up against a Crystal Palace side down in 15th, having conceded 14 from their opening 9 fixtures. I think this is going to be a little goal fiesta for City. However, beware, the games against Palace are always a great watch. Just like Trent, the delay on bringing Foden into my team means I paid 8.2 million for him as opposed to the 8.1 million that he was valued at last night, which again is gut-wrenching as I've now wasted 0.2 million on transfers I could have made had I not fallen asleep. Next up is the El Capitano, and that is Mohammed Salah. Mohammed Salah is on 107 points already so far in the FPL season. Nobody comes close to touching him. The next nearest player is Jamie Vardy and Michail Antonio, who are 50 points shy of him. He's actually on track at this trajectory for over 400 points in a fantasy Premier League season. This has never been done before. And don't get me wrong, I know he's had a couple of weeks like last week where he absolutely blew United out of the water with 3 goals and an assist. But he can do it. Like, he has the ability, he has it in him to go and score goals and have that fire in his belly. He's now scored 7 weeks running, and I honestly don't see how Brighton are going to stop him from scoring as well. And for that reason, this man is the captain for me this week. It's also worth noting that he's now in 69.7% of teams. So he's basically in 7 out of 10 fantasy Premier League teams. If you don't captain him and he returns big, or if he returns at all, you're going to get red arrows because everyone is going to fly past you. With that being said, if you don't captain him, and he blanks, and the player you captain does really well, you are going to shoot up the leaderboards. So if you're chasing points and you're desperate to catch up, that's probably the best way to do it. But if you're looking to stay where you are and maybe catch up via other players, then I would recommend continuing to captain him. As a West Ham fan, I'm probably being a bit more lenient here than what I normally would be, and that is on Said Benrahma. He hasn't returned any attacking points in the last 4 game weeks, which isn't good enough, even if we have won 3 of those last 4 fixtures. With that being said, we face Aston Villa and Wolves of 2 of our 3 next fixtures, and I'm hoping that he can get some attacking returns here. And who knows what happens at Anfield. West Ham may go there with a bit of confidence and we might get some attacking returns there. But he is someone that is on my radar now for potentially coming out, especially when you look at the informed Yuri Tillmans, etc. Next up is Demari Gray. I've had faith in him for a lot of the season so far, and I think he can continue the form that he is currently in. Rafael Benitez has come out in the press conferences this week and said that Abdoulaye Doucouré is getting better. It seems that he's progressing well. However, he can't say exactly how long it's going to be, but he did say at least a couple of weeks, and that is quoting Benitez directly. He reckons that with the international break, he will be back after then. So a couple of weeks until Doucouré comes back, and that only bodes well for owners of Townsend and Gray, as they are going to have to be the focal points of the attack with the returning Richarlison as well. So goals are going to come from these guys, whether it be via assists or them getting the goals themselves. And that is my 4-man midfield for you. They're all recommended in the spotlight this week. They've all got that gold shine to them. So if you're wondering who to get in and you don't have any of these 4 players, 1, why have you not got Mohammed Salah? 2, consider one of the other 3. They're all within more than affordable price points. Finally, let's move up top. So we're going to start off with Michail Antonio, the second highest or joint second highest scoring fantasy Premier League asset so far this season with Jamie Vardy. Only Mohammed Salah has scored more points, and that puts this guy in great position. It shows you how well he's doing this season, and it shows you how important and integral he is to a West Ham side that are absolutely flying high at the moment. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a fan. We've beat Man U and Man City in the Carabao Cup. We're undefeated and haven't conceded in European competition. Antonio has already returned 6 goals and 4 assists so far this season, and he is actually ranked the most influential, creative and threatening striker out of every single fantasy Premier League striker there is in the game at the moment. I believe he can continue this form against Aston Villa. I think he will be a handful for the Liverpool defenders, especially on the counter-attack, as I can imagine Liverpool dominating that game and West Ham sitting back. And also Wolves, they've been very shaky. I think he can take advantage of that leaky defence. After Antonio, we've got one of my new boys, and that is Toney. He's come in at 6.6 million, which is 0.1 million more than what I wanted to pay for him. Why did I have to be tired and go to sleep? That's another 0.1 million missing. So now I'm 0.3 million out of pocket. And to make things worse, the man I brought out to bring him in, Cristiano Ronaldo, dropped from 12.5 million to 12.4. So I lost 0.1 million on him as well. So effectively, by falling asleep, I've cost myself 0.4 million in team value. Timing your transfers, guys, to perfection, honestly, is actually an art. So I've got I've got 0.9 million in the bank still, even with this team you can see in front of you. I could have had 1.3 million in the bank. That is a big difference when upgrading, especially when you look at defenders like Livramento and Duffy. They're both 4.2 million sell values for me. So to be able to get a defender at the price point of 5.5 million as opposed to 5.1 million would have been a huge difference here. Gutted, but that's how the game goes. Make sure you keep track of players' values, whether they're going up or down. Anyways, let's actually talk about what Toney can bring to the table. Whilst he hasn't had an attacking return in the last 3 game weeks and he hasn't scored in the last 4 game weeks, when you look at his fixtures of Burnley, Norwich, Newcastle, and then even going on to a leaky Everton side and an out of form Tottenham team in the next 5 game weeks, this man has the opportunity to get goals. So now's the time for him to step up, prove me right, and make me fly up those rankings. Last but not least is Jamie Vardy. A few of you, like myself, brought him in last week, and unfortunately he only got a 45-minute appearance as he picked up a knock. However, I just want to reassure you that Brendan Rodgers has come out and said, and I quote, he's okay, he's trained the last couple of days, so he's fine. That being said, Ricardo Pereira is still potentially out of action, and we know that Pereira does like to get an assist for Vardy, and Ayoze Perez has still got a bug, so he probably won't feature. Got Arsenal next. He loves scoring against Arsenal, followed by a shaky Leeds team, and then he does have a difficult fixture in Chelsea, but after that, rest assured he has got Watford and Southampton, so he's got a nice run of fixtures here to add to the goals that he's already got this season. He's got 7, which puts him in 2nd place for the Golden Boot this season so far. Just like my midfield and my back line, all 3 of my strikers are recommended in the spotlight this week, and we're not going to cover off the gold trim players as I've spoken about each of them when covering my team. So the spotlight is going to be a lot shorter when we get onto it in a moment, so make sure you stick around and find out what other players I am recommending. Before we do move on to the spotlight, I'm just going to quickly run you through my bench. Adama Traore finally got an attacking return 2 weeks ago against Aston Villa. Didn't do much against Leeds, but did keep the clean sheet. Wolves conceded after he had come off. I'll take the extra point, I'm not going to complain. But with that being said, he is my first bench choice this week, as I feel that there is a potential to score against Everton. They obviously have conceded. What happened against Watford last week was just disastrous. And if anyone's going to capitalise, I think it's someone with Traore's physicality. Speaking of the Everton game last week, that's the exact reason why Livramento is 2nd on my bench and not 1st. Because if one of my defenders don't play, I've got 3 at the back. That means a defender must automatically be subbed on. So if Joao Cancelo does get rested this week, Livramento will automatically come in over Traore. That's how it works. You must be playing at least 3 defenders at all times, at least 3 midfielders, or at least 1 attacker. If you didn't know that, now you do. But Livramento is there just because Watford have proved that they can score. And finally, given how hot Liverpool are running at the moment with Salah's form, I've already got Sanchez in goal. I am not risking playing Duffy at all. He is way down the queue to come onto the pitch for me. 3rd place on the bench. He also was rested last week. I'm not sure if that was a knock or not. I didn't look into it too much, and that's why he's there. But without further ado, let's get into the spotlight and the players you should keep an eye on this week. The first player being recommended in the spotlight this week is Meslier. I can never say his name, so don't roast me for it. And you're probably thinking, what? A Leeds goalkeeper? Are you sure, Zen? They've only won 1 game all season and they've conceded 16 so far. They have, this is true. But they face Norwich, who are even worse. Norwich have only drawn 2, not won any, and they've only managed to score 2 all season. I'm going to say this is the cleanest of clean sheets you could get, which means they'll probably now concede, but that's why I'm recommending this man for this week. The only defender in this week's recommendation is going to be Chilwell, and I know I've already spoken about Rudiger and my team, but if I hadn't wasted the 0.4 million, I probably would be bringing him in this week. I also didn't want to take a minus 12 point hit. I'm hoping he stops going up in price because I do really want him in my team. It was always between him and Alonso. I genuinely thought Alonso was going to continue to start, but this man has proved his point, proved his worth. He's picked up 35 points in the past 3 game weeks with 3 goals scored and 2 clean sheets kept. Fantastic form. And just look at them fixtures: Newcastle, Burnley, Leicester, United and Watford. It's only going to get better for this man if he can continue to start in the Prem. Now, while Spurs have been having a poor patch, there's one man who has managed to retain the majority of his form, and that is Heung-Min Son, and he's a recommendation for this week. After being absolutely humiliated last weekend by Liverpool, United have shown us that there are goals to be scored if you go about it in the right way. And who else is better to break open United than a man with his ability and his pace in Son? It's also worth noting that he's hit double digits in 3 of his last 4 home fixtures for Tottenham. And it's the El Sacchio. Nuno, Oli. Whoever loses, probably going to lose their job. And then after United, he's got another leaky team in Everton before they face Leeds, Burnley and Brentford. And then one other fixture, if we look at the next 6, they've also got Norwich. So this man is a huge potential differential. I've started to take money away from my front line. I'm starting to invest into the middle of the park. And Son is actually the third, well, 4th if you count Antonio and Vardy together. He's the 3rd highest fantasy Premier League scoring asset. What's not to love about him? Every week I try and give you someone weird and wonderful to consider. And this week it is Burnley midfielder Maxwel Cornet. Cornet managed 2 in less than 80 minutes of playing time against Southampton last weekend. He did feature against City but didn't even get an hour's run out. And the last game that he did play in was a 2-2 draw at Leicester where he did manage to score. It's worth noting that in the next 5 game weeks, he does face teams such as Brentford. Chelsea's going to be a difficult one. Then Palace, Spurs and Wolves. So this could be a man who could continue that run of form, who could inspire Burnley to go on and play even better football. Who knows? He's a differential. That's why he's in here. He's not even in 1% of teams. He is valued at 6 million though. So he's around that Benrahma, Demari Gray price point. But for 6 million, he could potentially have a good upside and a good return for you. And my other striker recommendation this week is going to be Hee Chan Hwang of Wolves. Now, I have spoke about how they've not been reliable at the back, but they are still scoring goals. And Hee Chan has scored 3 in his last 3 and amassed 23 points in the last 3 game weeks. So he is a man that is on form. He's coming up against an Everton side that shipped 5 last week to Watford. He then goes on to face Crystal Palace, a West Ham team that are getting a bit more defensively resilient, but haven't necessarily shown that form in the Premier League yet. There are potentially goals on the horizon here. And at 5.7 million, not only is he a great enabler, it's good value for money. He's in 10% of teams. So if he does do well, you're probably going to get a good little boost up those rankings. I hope you guys have enjoyed this Game Week 10. If you think I've missed out a big potential asset, please let me know in the comments below, or drop your team in the comments below and I'll give you a rating out of 10 on how good I think your team is based on the current landscape. Until next time, guys, good luck and take care. Goodbye.